Welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at the king of the gods, the Thunderbringer, the almighty Zeus himself. But we're not going to look at his myth as this triumphant standard hero's journey. Instead, we're looking at it as a brilliant and honestly terrifying case study in the architecture of power. We're going to explore how the world he built, the thrones, the laws, literally the sky itself, was shaped entirely like the very thing he escaped.
Everyone fears becoming their parents, right? It's one of the oldest fears we have, way older than money, older than gods. Most of us spend a lifetime quietly promising ourselves that we absolutely will not do what was done to us. We spend our lives either keeping that promise, failing it, or, never really finding out which. But Zeus did something entirely different.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Zeus didn't just become his father, he became his father successfully. He actually solved the failure mode of his tyrannical ancestors. The story of Zeus is really the story of what fear becomes when it stops panicking and starts planning. It's the story of an escaped child who grew up to build a world with absolutely zero outside.
Section 1. The Family Method. The Evolutionary Design of a Prison.
So to really understand Zeus, we first have to look at the flawed rough drafts built by the two generations right before him. Zeus was born into a family with a very specific, kind of twisted method for dealing with their children. Generation 1 was Uranus, literally the sky itself, who buried his children back inside the earth using her body as a physical wall. Then you have Generation 2, Cronus, who improved on the design by making it biological. He just swallowed his children whole. And finally, Generation 3 is Zeus, who evolved this cosmic prison into something entirely psychological.
But here's the thing, both of those first two drafts totally failed because their systems of control left a massive vulnerability. Uranus built a prison out of the earth, right? Which meant the prison had a mind and it had a door he didn't control. So, Cronus fixed that by swallowing his kids, basically moving the prison inside himself. But he left a different flaw. He left the mother on the outside. And a mother standing on the outside is a mother who is free to plot.
Which brings us to Section 2, the child who escaped, the flaw in the perfect system.
Imagine a child whose first lullaby was the drowning of his own voice. In a hidden cave on the island of Crete, there's a newborn baby, and standing right around the mouth of this cave are armed men whose entire duty is just noise. When the infant cries, they strike their spears against their bronze shields over and over again. It was quite literally an engineering of sound designed to swallow another sound. Because if the father, listening from across the universe, heard that baby, that child wouldn't live to see the morning.
So here is how the escape actually went down. His mom, Rhea, hidden on the outside, gives birth in secret and uses those guards to drown out his cries. Then she walks right up to Kronos and hands him a stone wrapped in a baby blanket. And Kronos, supposedly the most careful, paranoid being in the cosmos, just swallows a rock blindly. He didn't even bother to double-check because, perfect systems don't get double-checked. That's what makes them perfect, and honestly, that is what makes them totally blind.
Moving on to Section 3, the perfect container, solving the failure mode.
So Zeus grows up, poisons his dad, frees his siblings, wins this massive 10-year cosmic war against the Titans, and finally takes the throne. But almost immediately, boom, he receives the exact same terrifying prophecy that drove his ancestors mad. A child will be born who will overthrow him. His wife Metis, who happens to be the wisest being in the universe, would bear a daughter and then a son greater than his father. But Zeus didn't run from the problem, he actually improved his family's answer. He deceived Metis with cunning, seductive words, swallowed her pregnant and whole, and trapped the door from the inside forever. He made absolutely sure there was no mother left on the outside to hand him a stone. In his system, the mother was the Palad.
Just pause for a second and consider the chilling reality of these two words. Metis remained. The poem tells us she lived on inside him. The wisest being in the entire universe went on thinking for him forever. Zeus had completely 100% internalized his fear. He closed the door so perfectly that what the world saw wasn't a monster, they saw a king who was never outthought. They called his swallowed fear by another name. They called it wisdom.
Section 4. The Sleepless King. Eternal Guard Duty. Here's a somewhat provocative question for you. What happens to a king when he removes every single outside threat only to realize that a perfect prison permanently converts its creator into a guard? When you remove the outside, you have to live in a universe where everything you fear lives on the inside with you. While all of creation slept, Zeus stayed awake managing this compounding, crushing weight of paranoia. First, you have a family coup by his wife, Hera, his brother Poseidon, and his daughter Athena. Then Typhon, this massive earthborn monster he had to hurl into a pit. Then Prometheus, chained to a mountain, flat out refusing to reveal a prophecy. And finally, the silver-footed goddess Thetis, who who carried a prophecy of a son greater than his father, whom Zeus literally forced to marry a mortal just to contain the threat. He had to contain everything, constantly.
Section 5. The Law Above Love. A Father versus the Architecture.
Let's slow down for a second, because the cost of all this gets intensely personal. Zeus had a mortal son named Sarpedon fighting at Troy. Sarpedon was a good man, he loved his life, he had absolutely no ambition for the cosmic throne. But destiny decreed he would die on that battlefield. Watching from Olympus, seeing his own son's death rapidly approaching, Zeus actually speaks out loud to his wife Hera. He asks, "Shall I snatch him up?" For one heartbeat, the king of the universe actually considers reaching down through the machinery of fate and breaking his own cosmic rules just to save his boy.
And this is absolutely crucial. Hera doesn't yell at him. She just chillingly recites the logic of his own reign right back to him. One law for everyone. She tells him that if he breaks the rules for love, every other god is going to demand to save their children, and the whole foundation of his reign will instantly collapse. You can't rebut your own constitution, right? The system bends for no one, not even its architect. Zeus obeys his own machine. The most powerful being in existence is reduced to just sending bloody rain down upon the battlefield as his son is killed.
To me, this fundamentally redefines that iconic image of Zeus holding the golden scales of fate. When Zeus later weighs the fate of Hector, another mortal he deeply loved, he doesn't agonize. He just says, "I did not mean it," and reaches for the instrument. The scales are not an instrument of divine might. They are a procedure of absolute powerlessness. They are the tragic, everyday habit of a ruler who has learned he cannot stand up against the very walls he built. The grief, it simply becomes maintenance.
Which leads us to our final act, Section 6, the cost of wisdom, a house with no outside.
So Zeus successfully broke the multi-generational cycle of violence in his family. No son ever overthrew him. But he did it at the ultimate personal cost. Down on Earth, mortals like Achilles actually believed that Zeus stood on the floor of his house, blindly distributing fates from two jars, one of blessings, one of evils. But the reality? The reality is that Zeus is trapped inside that very storehouse of sorrow. He isn't outside it, he is the keeper of it, completely unable to escape his own portions of grief that he has to deal out to himself. I mean, sure, he saved the world and gave it order, but in return, he got eternal guard duty in a house with no doors he could ever afford to open again.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, let's turn this myth back to our own reality for a second. Competence is invisible. Sometimes the strongest, calmest, most totally reasonable structures in our lives are built out of the exact same fear they were designed to answer. And when they work perfectly, well, we don't call it fear anymore. We call it maturity, or boundaries, or wisdom. So really ask yourself, what if you perfected so completely that no one, not even you, can live outside it anymore? Think about that for a bit. And until next time, keep questioning the architecture of your own world.